enough to send the Iranian leader into his underground bunker. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The visit by General Cooper comes as the United States appears to be near completing its military buildup in the region, including the deployment of the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, warships, destroyers, and additional air power. President Trump confirmed that what he described as a massive armada is moving toward the Middle East, saying the U.S. is getting its assets in place before a potential attack on the regime following its deadly crackdown on anti-government protests.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction. And we'll see what happens.
Let's hope they
We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. But we have a armada. We have a massive fleet heading in that direction. And maybe we won't have to use it. We'll see.
Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has reportedly been moved to a fortified underground bunker in Tehran amid fears of an imminent American strike. Khamenei's son, Massoud, is reportedly now managing day-to-day communications with government bodies, a sign, according to Israeli analysts, of growing instability and disruption at the very top of the regime. The Iranian military issued a fresh warning. The commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Mohammad Pakpour, said the force is more ready than ever. Finger on the trigger. Pakpour warned the United States and Israel to, quote, avoid any miscalculation. The Iranian people, mostly opposed to the regime, are awaiting the help promised from Trump during the government massacre of its citizens. A new report from Time magazine claims that more than 30,000 people had been killed in Iran during the anti-regime protests earlier this month. The figure quoted two unnamed senior officials in Iran's health ministry and far exceeds the official Iranian toll of just over 3,000 dead.
U.S. President Donald Trump's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Israel for critical talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Phase 2 in Gaza in general and the opening of the Rafah crossing in particular.
Talks reportedly focused on the U.S. demand that Israel enable the reopening of the Rafah crossing with Egypt and advance Gaza rehabilitation plans under the Trump administration's peace framework. Israeli media reports say the Americans are pressing to open the crossing even before the return of the last hostage, Police Master Sergeant Ran Gvili, while promising continued U.S. efforts to locate and recover him. Israel confirmed the cabinet will discuss the issue as officials stressed that Hamas violations and the delayed return of Gvili's body have kept Rafah closed. The Prime Minister's office confirmed that Netanyahu met with Witkoff and Kushner, saying only that the talks focused on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire. However, an Israeli official speaking to Hebrew-language media struck a sharply critical tone after the meeting, signaling deep frustration in Israel over the approach of the two senior Trump aides and raising questions about gaps between Jerusalem and Washington as discussions move into details, including the required disarming of Hamas. It's day 842 of the war in Gaza. The IDF says it has completed the demolition of a major Hamas tunnel in the southern Gaza Strip. According to the military, the tunnel stretched 4 kilometers and included weapon stockpiles and barracks used by Hamas operatives. The operation to destroy it began a year ago and was completed in recent days. The IDF also says that following last week's firefight in Rafah, where 6 terror operatives were killed, troops found military equipment, bomb-making manuals, and explosive devices. In a separate Rafah location, soldiers located 5 disused Hamas rocket launchers.
President Donald Trump has formally launched his new Board of Peace at a signing ceremony in Davos, Switzerland, saying the body will help manage global conflicts, starting with Gaza. But while some countries have joined, others are holding back. Spain has publicly declined to take part. Germany says the plan needs changes, and the European Union is raising legal and political concerns. Meanwhile, President Trump announced that Canada's invitation has been withdrawn. ILTV's India Naftali has more for us on this matter. India, what can you share?
Yes, Sivan, last week's signing marks a major step for President Trump's new Board of Peace, which he says will help enforce ceasefires and coordinate reconstruction after wars. The initiative is already attracting support from some countries, including several in the Middle East, while others are still deciding whether or not they'll join or stay out.
President Donald Trump held a signing ceremony Thursday in Davos to formally launch his new Board of Peace. At the ceremony, Trump's senior advisor, Jared Kushner, unveiled a $25 billion plan to rebuild Gaza and turn it into an economic hub by the year 2035. The plan focuses on infrastructure, private investment, and job creation. But the new board is already facing resistance in Europe. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez announced his country will not join.
Tras haberlo consultado con muchos de los países, tras haberlo meditado durante bastantes semanas, hoy he querido trasladar a los colegas del Consejo Europeo el que el Gobierno de España ha decidido no participar a la llamada Junta de Paz. Agradecemos la invitación, pero declinamos el participar en esa junta propuesta por la administración estadounidense.
Sanchez disapproves of the board, saying it operates outside the United Nations system and does not include the Palestinian Authority. Germany's chancellor also said Berlin cannot join under the current structure, citing constitutional concerns, but left the door open for future cooperation. The European Union's Foreign Policy Service has gone further, warning in an internal document that the board gives too much power to President Trump and departs from the limited mandate approved by the UN for Gaza. Meanwhile, President Trump announced on Truth Social that he is withdrawing Canada's invitation to the Board of Peace, although he did not give a reason why.
And as tensions mount from Iran to Gaza, we're now joined by retired Colonel Rich Outzen, senior fellow at the Atlantic Council, to help us break down what could come next and what it means for Israel. Thank you, Rich, for joining.
Good to be with you.
So we're witnessing a serious U.S. military presence in the region. What message does it send to Iran at the moment? And what is your assessment of an imminent attack?
Well, I think this is a very difficult deterrent situation. I think obviously President Trump, with regards to Iran, is trying to deter the regime from carrying out further massacres of its own people. As you know, Trump's position has been a little bit more reserved maybe than Jerusalem's on this. I think both the attacks on the nuclear program that happened last year and maybe further steps to destabilize the regime. There's many in the region, including in Israel, that would like to see a more forward position. Trump's been a little bit more inclined to say, well, let's try to modify their behavior. But with the news coming out that you've reported that maybe as many as 30,000 Iranian civilians, most of them young demonstrators, were killed by the regime in a 48-hour period, that cannot stand. Trump wants to be a peacemaker, and if it goes on his record that the greatest massacre of civilians since Babi Yar in World War II era it was while he was trying to deter Iran, it's a bad look. So I think he's sending a message of possible punitive steps and also certainly deterrence to any further massacres of civilians.
So it is indeed a bad look for Trump, but it appears as if a strike is still likely. But I wonder, under what conditions might Washington and Trump end up holding back?
Well, I think, Trump's a deal maker, so he's going to be looking for specific terms with regards to Iran's regional role. Iran's position, not just its nuclear program, but regionally, has taken massive blows, as you know, over the last year and a half, both because of Israel's military operations, because of operations against the Houthis and the Saudis reasserting themselves in Yemen, the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. So I think Trump's going to be looking for a modus vivendi, some sort of indication from the Iranians that they're going to stop. They're just going to stop this failed attempt to destabilize and control their neighbors, and that also that they're going to engage in some sort of more meaningful dialogue on the nuclear program. We can't let them reconstruct that, not from Israel's perspective and not from the Americans. I think the nuclear negotiations, that file probably remains central to this. And if they continue to prevaricate and obfuscate, then I think a strike becomes more likely.
Now, Iran has said any attack on its leadership would be an all-out war. What would a conflict like that look like, in your opinion? And what risks does that pose for Israel? What should Israel brace for?
Well, I think we've seen sort of the extent of Iran's capabilities to directly strike, either at the U.S. Through naval means and mines and rockets and missiles, and also the ability to, or the attempt to strike at Israel directly with air assets, with drones primarily, but also missiles. They're just not that good at it. The Iranians have neglected their conventional forces and their air and air defense forces for, well, the entire period since the revolution in 1979 in favor of these sort of quasi-clandestine proxy wars that they have fought. I think we could indeed see another wave of launched drones and missiles sent at Iran. I think that there are Iranian sleeper cells in Europe and the United States, not so much in Israel, that could engage in sabotage. I think they'll try, and they've tried in the past, direct assassinations. We know that there's been Iranian agents arrested in the United States previously for trying to assassinate Iranian dissidents and even to try to go after U.S. political figures up to and including the president. They talk a big game. The truth is they have fairly limited direct capabilities to strike, but they can certainly kill some people and blow some things up, and I think that would be what they'll try to do.
Now, moving on to Gaza, the U.S. envoys are pressing to reopen the Rafah crossing. And even before the return of the last deceased hostage, Ran Gvili, what does Israel see as the security risks of opening Rafah?
Well, the risks clearly are that if either the Egyptians or the Palestinian Authority or international forces are running the daily traffic in and out of Rafah, that they are going to not notice remilitarization of Rafah, the rebuilding of tunnels and the smuggling of weapons, and that creates additional lethal risk for the Israeli homeland as well as for forces operating in and around Gaza. That's undeniable. The devil is in the details, though, and the problem here is that Rafah is an important lifeline for the civilians of Gaza, and clearly with the Kushner plan and Witkoff plan to reconstruct Gaza, you've got to have an economic lifeline. So how do you do that? How do you have an economic lifeline that also respects Israel's security red lines? And that's the dilemma. I will tell you, based on my time working in Israel, I spent 4 years and a lot of it dealing with Gaza, this is an eternal dilemma. And the fact is, I think it's the right thing for the U.S. administration to push Israel on this a little bit, not to ignore Israel's concerns. But there is a clear preference for security logic and sort of a deprioritization of economic logic here, and that's not the path to peace. That's just the path to having a few more decades of this same problem. So I understand the Israeli sensitivities, and we do need to do more in terms of security guarantees once Rafah is reopened. But at the same time, I think Kushner and Witkoff are right. Israel needs a little push on this.
Well, thank you for your input, Rich. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we've got some exciting news. You can now get Israel updates on our WhatsApp channel, breaking stories, live updates, and verified reports, all delivered fast and accurate. Just scan the QR code on your screen to join.
Imagine earning your master's degree on top of Mount Carmel, where forest meets sea and where every day brings a new cultural, academic, and personal adventure. This is the multi-experience at U Haifa International. Here, students from around the world live and learn together in Israel's most culturally diverse city, meeting new people, discovering new perspectives, and shaping their own Israel experience.
There's people from different countries, from different religions and different languages. Somehow we are all very similar.
At U Haifa, academics meet real life. You don't just study, you experience Israel up close, explore Haifa's mountain ocean city life, and build global friendships that last a lifetime.
It's not just a degree, it's an experience. It opens your mind, your network, and your world.
U Haifa International. Master your mind, live your Israel experience.
Many questions remain on Gaza and the prospect of opening the Rafah border crossing. Israel is insisting that the last deceased hostage, Ran Gvili, be returned first, amid broader concerns over Qatar and Turkey's role in the Gaza rebuild and the billions Kushner wants to pour into the enclave for his ambitious Gaza Riviera plan unveiled at the World Economic Forum in Davos. To break this down, I'm joined by our correspondent, Alec Pollard. Hi, Alec. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yep.
What happened to Hamas disarming and to the return of the last hostage?
What happened is that it didn't happen, even though Israel, from its perspective, in order to move on to these reconstruction phases, the very first thing that had to happen was the return of all of the hostages, including the deceased hostages, and the disarmament of Hamas. And in the meanwhile, it seems like everyone wants to rush ahead and start to rebuild Gaza when half of Gaza is under control of Hamas. Part of it is under still sort of the area that's controlled by the IDF. There's that split there, the yellow line, the separation line. But from Israel's perspective, if all of those funds are flowing in to rebuild while Hamas is the one who's running the show over there, that's a completely unacceptable situation. And this is going to be a clash with the American administration. We did hear in that meeting between Trump and Netanyahu a while back that they said within 2 months Hamas will be disarmed, but there's no practical way of doing so unless Israel does it. And if you have parachuted in this board of peace, international stabilization force, reconstruction efforts all going on over there, then Israel isn't going to be able to do it.
It seems they're trying to move forward, and Israel just isn't there yet, not under their terms.
No, that's been the situation for months now, ever since the ceasefire was signed, which is there's reality and then there's the vision and what they want to do. And if you look now at what Kushner's plan that he unveiled in Davos, where he shows 180 skyscrapers along the coast of Gaza, an airport, a seaport, data manufacturers like, yeah, high-tech. Gaza is going to be a high-tech center. How is Gaza going to be a high-tech center and a tourist center when you have Hamas armed to the teeth running around half of the enclave over there? It's a completely unrealistic scenario. Of course, Israeli officials are not going to say this to the Trump administration's face, but it's certainly concerning, this idea of pouring all this money. And it's been tried before. It's been tried before to pour billions into Gaza, into
Turn
reconstruction.
it into a Riviera,
right? Economic development. But, Hamas and the Palestinians as well. But let's say at the moment who is in charge there, which is Hamas, say their goal is to destroy Israel. So you can't build 180 skyscrapers for tourism purposes when you have another goal, which is to destroy Israel and to, move people into Israel, the right of return, as they call it, which is UNRWA's mandate. All of those things are still in place. If concessions had been demanded in return for all of those things, that would be a different story, but that simply hasn't happened.
Well, we'll certainly follow that story and see how vision meets reality. Thank you very much, Alec. Israel is watching closely a dramatic and dangerous escalation in northeastern Syria, where Syrian government forces backed by Sunni jihadist militias and Turkey are pushing into autonomous Kurdish-held areas, raising serious security concerns for Israel and its longtime Kurdish allies. ILTV's Devo Klein has more.
Amid claims of a ceasefire, Syrian forces have crossed the Euphrates and are advancing toward the Kurdish-majority Hasakeh province, as Kurdish authorities declare a state of general mobilization and warn of an imminent massacre without international intervention. Kurdish leaders say the assault is being carried out by forces linked to radical Islamist groups, including elements with deep ideological roots in ISIS, now operating under the banner of an internationally recognized government in Damascus. For Israel, this is not a distant conflict. The Kurds have been a key partner in defeating ISIS, maintaining stability east of the Euphrates, and blocking Iranian and jihadist expansion in Syria. Israeli security officials are particularly concerned that the collapse of Kurdish control could open a new corridor for Iran-backed militias, jihadist groups, and hostile forces to operate freely across eastern Syria. Kurdish officials have confirmed ongoing contact with Israeli figures and are appealing for support, saying any help that prevents a bloodbath would be welcomed. On the ground, the situation is deteriorating fast. The strategic city of Kobani is now under siege. Hasakeh is now bracing for a direct assault. Video emerging from the areas show brutal abuses, including executions and the mistreatment of women, footage that has deepened fears of a return to ISIS-style atrocities in the region.
The story of the Jewish people has never been about standing still. It's a story of moving forward, of taking responsibility, of protecting what matters, no matter the challenge. That story is still being written today, not with swords, but with stewardship of the land, with the rule of law, and with the determination to secure Israel's future. And on the front lines of that mission stands Regavim. Regavim is a public movement dedicated to defending Israel's national lands and natural resources in the field, in the courts, and in the public square. Through research, on-the-ground action, and legal advocacy, Regavim works to uphold the rule of law and to ensure that Israel can grow, thrive, and remain rooted in its homeland.
Israeli security forces have completed a major anti-terror operations in the ancient biblical city of Hebron, targeting terror infrastructure and illegal weapons in Judea. The operation in the Jabal Johar neighborhood involved IDF troops, the Shin Bet, border police, and Israel police officers from the Judea and Samaria district, operating under the command of the Judea Brigade. Security forces sealed off the area and searched approximately 350 buildings as part of the week-long operation, which ended over the weekend. 14 suspects wanted for terror activity and illegal weapons possession were arrested. Forces also seized 8 firearms, including M16 and M4 rifles and handguns, along with dozens of knives and additional weapons. The IDF says the operation was aimed at preventing terror attacks and strengthening security in the Hebron area.
Step into the story of Israel's heartland with Blessed by Israel, where every purchase connects you to the land, the people, and the promise. Taste the sweetness of the promised land in their delicious honeys, or wear the story of the land close to your heart with the stunning Special Places of the Land necklace. Behind each product is a family, pioneers living in Judea and Samaria, crafting beauty and goodness from the soil of the Bible. When you buy their creations, you're not only receiving something extraordinary, you're investing in Israel's future, helping small businesses thrive and communities grow strong. Join a movement that celebrates faith, resilience, and hope. Visit blessedbyisrael.com and use ILTV's special code BLESSISRAEL, that's BLESSISRAEL, at checkout for 10% off on your first order. Be part of strengthening Israel, one purchase at a time.
IDF spokesman Brigadier General Efi Defrin says that there are no changes to Home Front Command guidelines for Israeli civilians. The IDF is optimally prepared both defensively and offensively. Defrin said it is important to emphasize that there is no change to the Home Front Command's instructions. The military will issue immediate updates if the situation changes. The message from the IDF comes as several major international airlines have suspended flights to Israel and the region, citing escalating security concerns. Dutch carrier KLM and Air France announced they are canceling weekend flights to Tel Aviv, with KLM also halting service to Dubai and Saudi Arabia. Other airlines, including Lufthansa, Swiss, United Airlines, and Air Canada, have also canceled or suspended flights. The decisions come amid intensifying speculation that U.S. President Donald Trump may order military action against Iran following a deadly crackdown on anti-regime protesters. As we reported, Trump has confirmed a significant U.S. military buildup in the region, including naval forces moving toward Iran, even as Israel's defense establishment stresses there is no immediate threat to the home front. Now, the head of U.S. Central Command, General Brad Cooper, arrived in Israel for high-level talks with senior Israeli officials, with the potential U.S. attack now possibly close enough to send the Iranian leader into his underground bunker. More on this from ILTV's Steve Leibowitz.
The visit by General Cooper comes as the United States appears to be near completing its military buildup in the region, including the deployment of the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, warships, destroyers, and additional air power. President Trump confirmed that what he described as a massive armada is moving toward the Middle East, saying the U.S. is getting its assets in place before a potential attack on the regime following its deadly crackdown on anti-government protests.
You know, we have a lot of ships going that direction, just in case. We have a big flotilla going in that direction. And we'll see what happens. We have a big force going toward Iran. I'd rather not see anything happen, but we're watching them very closely. But we have a armada. We have a massive fleet heading in that direction. And maybe we won't have to use it. We'll see.
Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has reportedly been moved to a fortified underground bunker in Tehran amid fears of an imminent American strike. Khamenei's son, Masoud, is reportedly now managing day-to-day communications with government bodies, a sign, according to Israeli analysts, of growing instability and disruption at the very top of the regime. The Iranian military issued a fresh warning. The commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Mohammad Pakpour, said the force is more ready than ever. Finger on the trigger. Pakpour warned the United States and Israel to, quote, avoid any miscalculation. The Iranian people, mostly opposed to the regime, are awaiting the help promised from Trump during the government massacre of its citizens. A new report from Time magazine claims that more than 30,000 people had been killed in Iran during the anti-regime protests earlier this month. The figure quoted two unnamed senior officials in Iran's health ministry and far exceeds the official Iranian toll of just over 3,000 dead.
U.S. President Donald Trump's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are in Israel for critical talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Phase 2 in Gaza in general and the opening of the Rafah crossing in particular.
Talks reportedly focused on the U.S. demand that Israel enable the reopening of the Rafah crossing with Egypt and advance Gaza rehabilitation plans under the Trump administration's peace framework. Israeli media reports say the Americans are pressing to open the crossing even before the return of the last hostage, Police Master Sergeant Ran Gvili, while promising continued U.S. efforts to locate and recover him. Israel confirmed the cabinet will discuss the issue as officials stressed that Hamas violations and the delayed return of Gvili's body have kept Rafah closed. The Prime Minister's office confirmed that Netanyahu met with Witkoff and Kushner, saying only that the talks focused on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire. However, an Israeli official speaking to Hebrew language media struck a sharply critical tone after the meeting, signaling deep frustration in Israel over the approach of the two senior Trump aides and raising questions about gaps between Jerusalem and Washington as discussions move into details, including the required disarming of Hamas. It's day 842 of the war in Gaza. The IDF says it has completed the demolition of a major Hamas tunnel in the southern Gaza Strip. According to the military, the tunnel stretched 4 kilometers and included weapon stockpiles and barracks used by Hamas operatives. The operation to destroy it began a year ago and was completed in recent days. The IDF also says that following last week's firefight in Rafah, where 6 terror operatives were killed,